So I recently compared the ZX4-RR to the ZX6R, and what I found interesting was a lot of you guys said you would prefer the ZX4-RR because of the TFT display. Some of you guys said if the ZX6R had a TFT dash, you would go with the ZX6R. And honestly, I agree with you. Part of the reason I'm not turned on by the CBR 600RR is because of that old school ugly ass dash. But you know which bike actually has a TFT display? The Aprilia RS660. Let's compare the two and tell you why I'd pick the RS660 over the ZX4-RR. We'll start with the MSRP. The Kawasaki Ninja ZX4-RR starts at $96.99. The RS-V4 retails for $11,499. That's an $1,800 difference. What do you get with the RS660 that you don't get with the ZX4-RR? Well, let's dive deep. Right off the bat, you get a little over 200 more cc of displacement, which obviously equates to more power and torque. How much more power? Well, the ZX4-RR comes in at 26.5 foot-pounds of torque, right at about 11,000 RPM, and the RS660 is double that at about 50 foot-pounds of torque. Horsepower numbers, people are claiming it's about 80 horsepower, and the RS660 is right at 100 horsepower. Now what's interesting about the RS660 is 80% of its torque comes on at 4,000 RPM, which gives it a nice balance of power throughout the rev range. The ZX4-RR, you really have to wring out and wait for that power to come on. Peak torque is so high in the RPMs, I'd imagine that bike is pretty boring to ride at anything below 11,000 RPM. The wet weight is what's really interesting about these two bikes. You would think that the Aprilia would be heavier because it has a bigger engine, but actually the Kawasaki is 12 pounds heavier. The ZX4-RR has a 415 pound wet weight, and the RS-V4 is sitting at 403 pounds. And I think this has a lot to do with the aluminum frame versus the steel frame in the ZX4-RR. The biggest downside to that motorcycle, if they had given it an aluminum frame, I think the ZX4 would be a freaking killer. The RS660 has preload and dampening on both front and rear suspension, and the ZX4-RR fork only has a preload adjustment, but the rear seems to be fully adjustable. The ZX4-RR has ABS, but I think it's just a standard typical ABS system. The RS660 has a 6-axis IMU, just like a lot of the big heavyweight superbikes. That means cornering ABS, traction control, wheelie control, all the electronic aids you can jizz for. The RS660 even has cruise control. Both bikes do have a slipper clutch, auto blip, and quick shifter standard, but that's where the similarities end. If you're considering the ZX4-RR over the ZX6R because the 4R is more technologically advanced, think about what the ZX4-RR actually is. It's the ZX25R with a 400cc motor. Yes, it screams like any other inline 4, but if technology is really your thing, and you have to have the newest, latest, and greatest, the RS660 was built from the ground up. It has all the big bike tech in a lightweight, slow motorcycle. The RS660 is not quite the screaming 4-banger like the Yamaha R6. Some would even consider it underpowered compared to the R6, and some would consider the RS660 a slow bike. Now, if I were in the market for a slow bike to ride fast, I'd probably be eyeing the ZX4-RR. Everybody in the US is calling it a track bike, because essentially that's where you'd have the most fun with it. The slow bike fast is quickly becoming a trend, and for $1,800 more, there's a better slow bike that you can ride fast. My money's gonna go to the RS660 on this one. You just get so much more with $1,800. But I already know the argument you guys are about to make, so I'll see you in the comments section, you ding-dongs. Aprilia's unreliable.